What's in a name? Not everyone can be called John Smith or Jane Doe, but sometimes a name can reveal more than what we are aware of. Hi, and welcome to the Jessica Bailey Lounge. I'm your host, Jessica Bailey. This time on the show, we discuss how a person's name can affect another's judgment. Here is a statement that may resonate with you. In recruitment, biases can lead to generalizations that determine the right candidate for the job, not based on their skills, but on the perceived origin of their name or nationality. To discuss this further, please welcome my guest, writer and performer, Sukjit Kasa. Sukjit, welcome to the Jessica Bailey Lounge.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you have a proudly traditional name. Tell me, how do you find it offensive when people don't pronounce your name correctly?
No, I think because if you were born in Australia or you've been brought up in Australia, you've become so used to repeating your name. I have this little trick of how to get people to say my name, especially because I'm a performer. I've had to go on stage and the MC has to introduce me, and they always ask me, can I get your name right? And I think it's great. I like it when people ask me, because then they've shown that they care. They're going to take the effort to learn how to say my name. So my first name, Sukjit. It means winner of peace in the Sikh sort of language.
Right.
Kaur is my middle name, and then Khalsa, like salsa, is my surname. And I think that's just like a trick. I'm sure many migrants do that who've got like difficult or long names, but that's how I've sort of survived. Or I get people to like rap it or sing it. Sukjit, Sukfreak, fully Sikh, like just.
That's so cool. You're rapping already. So tell me, how do you pronounce your name correctly? Did I pronounce it correctly when I said
absolutely.
Sukjit?
Yeah, Suk, like don't be a sook. You know how you say that to a kid? Don't be such a sookie.
Yeah.
So Suk, and then Jeet, like feet. Core, like apple core, like you're eating an apple.
Yeah.
And then Khalsa.
Sukjit Kaur Khalsa.
Perfect.
Right.
Nailed it.
That is so interesting. Sukjit, tell me, I mean, many Sikh women, they use the name Kaur. Is it Kaur or
Core, like apple core.
Yeah, they use the name Kaur. Is there a reason behind this?
So, as you know, a lot of countries, such as India, had a history of the caste system. So your surname would have a lot of baggage attached to it. People would know exactly where you're from or what your caste is. And when Sikhs came along, 500 years ago, they wanted to eliminate the caste system. They really wanted to make an egalitarian society, which was the surnames were one sort of example of doing that. So instead of having your original surname, they said from now onwards, if you want to be Sikh, let's make our surnames Singh and Kaur. Singh for men and Kaur for women.
Right.
And Singh, translates to lion or king, and Kaur, some people say translates to lioness, or also prince. Instead of being princess, which some people might think it means, it actually means prince, because as a princess you don't actually have the power, but as a prince you do. So they're trying to talk about how, Sikh women, we actually do have a lot more power than we think.
Interesting. Now, bearing such a name in a place such as Australia, have you ever felt like, you were limited of chances in a work field just by the sound of your name?
Absolutely. Like, I think as a kid, I hated my name. I was probably in year 1. So I was probably like 5 or 6 years old when my best friend said, can I call you Suki? And I thought it was great. I was like, yeah, Suki. It's 2 syllables. It's easy to say. It's cute. Except that stupid nursery rhyme, Suki put the kettle on, or Polly take it off again. I don't know. I thought that would make things easier. And since, 5-year-old to, 20-year-old, I was Suki in Perth. And then I moved to Melbourne and I started testing out my new identity. And I said, I just want to try saying Sukjit. When someone introduces me or says, hello, what's your name? I want to say Sukjit. And I realized it wasn't that hard. I was so afraid of saying my real name. And in workplace situations, in getting jobs, like, yeah, like you get the weird comments like, oh, that's unusual, or that's weird, or that's difficult, which I, used to get a little bit annoyed at. But then I got used to just going, my name is Sukjit. We can all learn how to say it. I've learned how to say very different names. I think it just takes a little bit of effort and being like really confident instead of cowering behind your name. But in terms of like workplace, I think as an artist, compared to a lot of other industries, my name has been embraced. However, I do feel like because my name is attached to an identity and a culture and a race and, being a Sikh woman with body hair and having lots of other, differences has made a package that has caused discrimination. So it's not just the name alone. I think it's having all those things about myself. An example could be not being seen as skilled enough, or people making assumptions based on my name and going, oh, but you don't have the experience, or you don't have this and this and this and this. And I feel like sometimes I've been made to jump through all these hoops and do all these big things that maybe my colleagues who are same age as me, different colour skin, different gender, and suddenly they're not going through the same. So, and that's when I've started to feel like, oh, why am I being treated like that? Why did you make assumptions about me? And I think a lot of migrants who have come to Australia, there is this sense that because of your name and your identity and your race, suddenly the system sees you as not skilled. Whether you've come here as the most educated person with PhDs and so many qualifications, you're not recognised for that. And I think a lot of my life experience goes into my work and as an artist. And I think I used to work in the community arts as well, and a lot of that community experience went into that job. I didn't do a degree in communities. That was my life. Like, I grew up in a community and I learned so much as a kid through exposure of all different backgrounds, that now as an adult, there's people who don't come from those communities who are trying to learn more about that, and they get rewarded for it. Whereas I'm going, hang on, this knowledge is actually sitting right in Australia, but why don't we want to listen to people who don't have, a white sounding name?
That's interesting. What do you think? We hear that, I've heard of people wanting to change their names based on the discrimination of names that they were getting. I've got a friend who has a traditional Muslim name, and he looked at me and he goes, Jessica Bailey, your name sounds so white. And he shared his experience with me where he was this close to changing his name, his traditional name, to say Anthony Hamilton, just to get, accepted, if you know what I mean. What do you have to say to that? Do you think it's worth changing our traditional names to a more white sounding name like Jane Smith just to be accepted? Is that worth it?
I feel like, from someone who has changed her name, even though I changed it to Suki and it wasn't very Australian, it wasn't Sarah, but it's still...
Sarah would have been nice.
Yeah, it would have been better if I thought of that. But I kind of stuck with Suki, and I regretted it, because when I moved back to Perth 5 years ago, and so many people from my past life were calling me Suki, and I had to keep saying, no, call me Sukjit. And I think I realised that I didn't realise how important my name was to me until recently.
Right.
And now I've reclaimed that name, and I've realised I've tried to fit in. I've tried to be Australian. I've changed my accent. I've tried to straighten my hair as well at times. I've changed how I dress.
And why? Why?
Because I thought it would help me further my career.
Right.
It would, because as a brand, as an artist, like, you want a brand that's accessible, and constantly when I make work, it has to be pleasing a white audience. And it's really hard if you've grown up with that. I'm now 27. I've had 27 years of that ingrained in me. It's really hard to create work that is now not for a white audience, because I don't even know how to do that, because I've become so used to educating people. Hi, my name is Sukjit, I'm a Sikh, I'm not a terrorist. That was like post 9/11. Imagine having a name like Osama now. Like anyone who has the name Osama will have connotations because of 9/11. Whereas there could be white terrorists around the world with a name like John, but we don't go around saying, oh, John the terrorist. And no one's going to name their child John now because there was a terrorist once called John. Like Joseph Stalin. Do we still call kids Joseph? Yes, we do. But it's just not the same when your color, when the skin color is not white. I think that there's such a different standard. There's unconscious bias constantly, like that happens in all across like every sector. The experiences that I have in the arts, you know, I think are much better, I think, compared to a lot of colleagues I know in other industries, but it's still not good enough. It's still not at the place that I think we could be. And all it takes is more people wanting change. I truly believe that Australia and the system would be very different if people in power actually wanted things to change. But because they secretly don't want it to change, because that change means that they might lose something. People are so afraid that they're going to lose something.
So you think the system genuinely don't want things to change?
No, because if white men, if the world changes, which it is, they feel scared that suddenly their power is being taken away.
Right.
I don't think that's the case. I think there's enough power and enough opportunities in this amazing country for everyone. But that sense of, you know, sharing is caring, you learn as a kid, or the fair go, and all these, you know, tactics that are used to say that when you come to Australia, we've got this land of free and we've got these opportunities and we're going to save you from all the trauma and all the troubles you've gone through. But when you get here, what actually happens? It's just full of discrimination. You have to assimilate, you've got to fit in. And to come back to your question, after doing all those exercises and going through all that, nothing actually changes. Like, yes, I've got a little bit of success and a little bit more opportunities because my accent changed and I assimilated into being an Aussie girl and I get congratulated. Exactly, which worked for a little bit. But then I started challenging things further than what people were comfortable with. And that is when I'm realizing I'm getting punished. I'm getting punished for those things because people only want to see an empowered brown girl doing her thing like a feminist t-shirt, but not actually listening to what I want. Because I know what I want, I've always known what I wanted, but people don't want to give that.
Many people of ethnic origin in Australia have been and continue to be judged based on the ethnicity of their name, with complete disregard to their qualifications, experience, and what they can offer an organization. Unconscious bias is the social stereotyping of certain groups of people that individuals form outside their own conscious awareness. Now, many organizations are now using unconscious bias training to increase workplace diversity. So, Jik, how did you come to accepting yourself? You know, you moved from a girl who was ready to change her name just to be better. You know, a girl whom even forcefully adopted the Australian accent, as you mentioned, just so you could be accepted. But, you know, looking at you now, you sounding really confident, even just with your name. You know, you're doing a lot of great stuff in the community. As I said, I've heard so many great things about you. And you know, it's sounding to me like you've really come to that acceptance of who you are and saying, this is my name, I'm Sukjit, and you know, I'm not sorry for it, I'm not going to be apologizing. So it takes a journey, and I want to hear from you, how did you come to that point?
I don't know if it's a gendered thing or it's a non-gendered thing when it comes to wanting to please. And I think being a good migrant in my family meant working so hard. And I'm sure you'll understand what I mean. Like, you know, getting good grades and getting a degree and getting educated and constantly making sure everyone was happy around you. So whether it's the white racist people, whether it's the weird bosses, whether it's your family and community and friends, everything. But then only now have I started to let go of trying to please everyone around me. I wanted to be liked. I think there's this general thing that humans, we want to be liked, we want to be accepted, we don't want to be alone, and we don't want to be shunned out of society. And I've had to confront that fear, and I've had to go, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, how important are my values? And I've learned my values are so important. I'm willing to say goodbye to tens of thousands of dollars just so I make sure my values are intact.
True.
Because if I physically get sick, I physically get so upset when I know something's not right. And I feel like I always have to listen to that, because at the end of the day, I've gone through so many different work experiences that I go through the same cycle, and then I go, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to please everyone? What am I so afraid of? At least the people that love me and that I want in my life, they'll accept me for what I'm going through. And it's a journey. It's a lifelong journey. I actually haven't fully embraced who I really want to be yet.
So you're working
I'm still working towards it. And I think it's because, you know, my hometown is Perth and I was born and brought up here, but I feel very alone in Perth as well. And a lot of Perth people say that. They feel alone. I've done a lot of storytelling workshops, and I feel like there's this general feeling of not having a sense of community or not having people understand. And I think it's, you know, having these conversations or meeting other people who are going through similar stuff, that reminds you that you're not alone. There's actually so many people going through similar stuff.
Now, I'm going to just listen to this. I'm going to read this little text that I grabbed from research that I did, speaking about employment and discrimination of names. So resume studies have been conducted involving researchers responding to real job advertisement with very similar resumes of fictitious job candidates. Now, some resumes have names indicating ethnic minority groups, while others have more common names. Now, an analysis of the resume studies found that more than 95% of the studies identified high ethnic discrimination in recruitment. On average, ethnic minority applicants received about half as many positive responses to their job applications. Now, the results show it is the ethnic minority name that is the hindrance.
Yeah.
Rather than an assessment about a candidate's language skills or preference for local qualifications and work experience. A 2015 study for Australian National University found applicants with Chinese, Middle Eastern and Indigenous sounding names were far less likely to get called for an interview.
Absolutely.
What is your thoughts on this? So this is actually a real stuff.
Yeah,
This is the conversation. You know,
and
this is 2021. This is a current research.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. Imagine not just in getting a job, but applying for a house or filling out a form or getting anything, working through any everyday task, but by having a race that is seen as less than in Australia, or having a culture or having stereotypes that people still believe. We're in 2022, but people still have stereotypes in their head of how they feel towards all different types of races. And this is across every industry. And I feel like if people somehow were taught that through characters in movies or TV shows or ads or different, jokes around the dinner table, racist jokes around the dinner table, all those things I believe have culminated in people, whether they are conscious of it or not, I think some people are conscious of it, but they don't want to change. And some people aren't conscious of it, that they actually have that in them. And I think like even within my own family, you know, within our own communities, we've also got that, which is a whole other conversation to do with like lateral racism, like within our own. And I think if we can all just as humans recognize that we all are capable of having racist thoughts or stereotypes or negative comments towards people, like can't we just like have that conversation with ourselves and go, hang on, I'm actually going to call myself out on that. I've had those experiences where I'm like, why did I think that? That doesn't sound very cool. I don't know where did that come from? But I think in the mainstream society, people aren't having those conversations with themselves. I think that people are just going, oh, this is truth. This is real. This is reality. When it's not. It's more complicated than that. There's like so many different skill sets and things that people have got to offer in Australia from different backgrounds. But I don't know, it's just frustrating. Look, you can hear it in my voice. Like I'm tired. I'm only 27 and I feel like retiring. Imagine people who are in generations above me that have been around in Perth and have been trying to make it and have dealt with so much racism in the workplace. Like I've heard so many horrible stories and I'm going, it's now this generation or underneath me, the younger generation that is getting really frustrated and going, hang on, we deserve to be treated better. And I know a lot of older generation is getting mad at that and going, stop being so spoiled. You don't know how hard it was for us. But I think we need to listen to that younger generation and go, yeah, we do deserve better. It's okay to ask for more.
Speaking of younger generations, do you think the future is better? Do you think we're looking at a positive future compared to where we're at now or where we're coming from in terms of acceptance of the multiculturalism or cultural backgrounds in Australia?
I feel like it's getting better on a micro level. I think on an everyday school friends, maybe some workplaces, families, I think that the conversations are getting more progressive and more accepting. But on a systematic, on a more macro level, it is not. It's sometimes in certain sectors, it's getting worse. I think we're both in the film industry. I was asking someone about applications for filling out forms for grants. And, someone told me 10 years ago, those applications were much easier. And I thought, I'm very surprised to hear that. Why is it getting even harder, not only for a privileged white person, but then someone who isn't privileged, who has very limited English skills, or it doesn't have access to those spaces to make films or make it as a singer or a dancer or an actor or whatever, without the contacts. Like imagine how hard, that's what I'm always thinking. Like if it's hard for me and I've got a lot of privilege, I've got the Australian passport, the Australian citizenship, the accent, the Suki, the Aussieisms, the knowing how to talk to my audiences. Imagine what it's like for someone who doesn't have those things. That's what really makes me angry. Because when I'm filling out things, that's what I've got at the back of my mind. How can we make these experiences more accessible? I think that the arts is very elitist and it needs to, as a class system, it needs to change. I understand that the history of the arts in Australia has been of the rich, and if you've got the time, you can, spend all your money and invest in yourself and make art, but it needs to change. I think art is people don't take it seriously enough because they think it's entertainment. I think art is so much deeper and scarier than that, because art has the ability to change culture and mindsets and stereotypes and control how society thinks about things. And that's also why I think the arts is controlled by the elite and the rich, because they're scared of people like us, Jess. Like they're scared that if things change once again, the world's gonna change for them.
So Jake, speaking of macro level, what do you think should be done? What do you think would you suggest I don't know, more initiatives to be, brought up or to address this kind of issue when we're talking a macro level now? Because you just said, the younger generations are already accepting that, but not on the macro level.
No.
So let's talk about the macro level. What do you think we should be doing there to
I
make
think
things better?
Absolutely. In any organization, in any country, I think that culture, and if we're talking about race and progression, it starts from the top down. So if our Prime Minister is condoning certain behaviour, if our Parliament is condoning certain behaviour, if our policies and are like accepting and dismissing anytime someone brings up discrimination, then that's where the problem starts. I think, in an ideal world, I'd love to tear it all down and start again. But I know that's not possible. I know that there's a lot of people out there that are doing amazing work on the macro level to make change, to ensure that policies change, because that's where we need an answer to. Until we get that policy change, how will change happen in society? There's always this onus on the everyday person to make change, especially with racism. I feel like it was ever since I was 4 years old and 9/11 happened, I thought it was my problem that I needed to deal with and make sure that people didn't chuck fruit at my family because they thought we were terrorists. Like, I thought it was my problem and my responsibility to make sure, constantly paranoid and on edge. But then now, as like a 27-year-old, I'm like, hang on, racism is a white person's problem. What are white people doing to fix this problem? Because they created it, and now all the like diverse people are left to fix it. So I think it's just like, I think that this isn't something new. A lot of people are talking to me about, why is representation so important in the arts, and why should we, embrace multiculturalism and all this stuff? But I actually think like this fight has been going on for so long that I've just been born into that fight, and I just want to continue that fight. But I think there's been so much work that's been done and it just never got heard. It never got taken seriously, and it got dismissed. And now people are acting like it's such a new phenomenon to have diversity or representation, when like people were shouting about that ages ago. It's just, I hope that not like, in terms of practical things in the arts, like I always ask myself, when I watch a TV show or when I watch a film or see a theatre show, I look at who's profiting off this story. If it's a story that is non-white, is it being made by white people? Are they getting all the awards and the money and the accolades and more jobs because of that? I know the answer to that. Yes, they are. But how can we actually empower each other in different communities to tell our own stories, to, skill up? There's so many people that already have the skills. They just haven't been taken seriously or been given the opportunity to shine. Or if you really feel that there's a lack of skill, like for myself, I know the skills that I'm very weak in. So I want to make sure I can learn those things so I can actually do those things for myself, and I'm not relying on hiring the best top white person in Perth for that job. Because there are those conversations that I've been having in the last couple of years where when I'm making a crew, people are always telling me, make sure you choose the most experienced person. And you know what I ask? I ask, did that white person, are they the top person in Perth because they were born like that? Or is it because they were given hundreds of opportunities to turn into that amazing person? What would you and me, what would our careers look like if we were given the same opportunities as white people in Perth? It'd be very different. I'd be living in a mansion and I'd have $1 million. But that hasn't happened because I don't fit into what is acceptable in Australia.
So just say one advice to a young person right now who is having our audience, who's having a name such as yours, a traditional name. What is your advice to them right now? And you could just tell them directly, just from your experience. Would you advise them to change their name, or would you tell them to keep to their names and be proud of their names?
If you're considering changing your name because like yourself, like myself, you've been bullied. I was really bullied for my name in school. Or you feel like you won't get ahead in your career. I hope that you hold on to your culture, your language, your traditions, because that stuff is so priceless. And I'm now someone who has tried to fit in and tried to change things about myself, but I actually haven't gone ahead. And it actually hasn't made a difference, because society is the problem, not you. Your name is not the problem, the system is the problem. So please, I urge you to keep your name, because it's the thing that is going to define you.
It's been a really interesting chat with you, Sukjit.
Thank you
so much.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you. A person's name should be valued, not used to discriminate against. If we can at least realize what damage unconscious bias does, we are in with a chance to change. And thank you for joining us as we come to some new understandings. Till next time, be bold, be brave, and be you.